Thank you. Good night. Well, hey guys. We have an apropos subject for Halloween week, end-of-life issues, and advance directives. I'm not a healthcare professional myself. We have one in the room. Here's my stepdaughter, who's a nurse. This is Kat and her husband Jorge. And I'll encourage anybody who is a student or professional in healthcare to correct me on any misstatements of fact or add anything that is appropriate. So it's not our favorite topic. Mortality sucks. My bona fides to talk on this subject are being sort of a survivor. I'm 64 years old and I've outlived 3 wives. I'm going to have to mention some of their experiences in the way of illustrating some of these points. Vicky, Paula, and Barbara. And I learned about death when I was 4 years old. My mother explained it to me. It was very sad. I cried. My parents were going to die. I was going to die. Everything was going to die. I asked my mother, does everything die? She said, yes, everything dies, except the grass. Now, I know now that's not scientifically accurate. But I wanted very much to be like the grass, to die and come alive again. And our dissatisfaction with the state of affairs, mortality sucking as it does, is expressed very eloquently in this poem by Omar Khayyam, translated by the English poet Edward Fitzgerald. All love could thou and I with fate conspire to grasp this sorry scheme of things entire. Would we not shatter it to bits and then remold it nearer to the heart's desire? You bet we would. But we have to deal with life as it is. All of us have to deal with this. Anybody here not seen a dead body? Touched one? We all know what it is. So what is it that we fear about mortality? Just off the top of my head, I listed a few things here. Loss of power. How could you be any more powerless? That's the end. That's the end of your will. And those of us who are not religious believers find this especially distressing. We don't have the consolations of belief in an afterlife to sustain us. We have to make do with what we see and what we can do in the life that we live. People fear separation, cessation, the end of our existence. I conceive it to be like life before birth, life after death, life before birth, probably pretty much the same thing. No reason to expect, no scientific reason to expect that we have any consciousness, that anything is going to bother us. When it's over, it's over. And I saw something in a play by Kurt Vonnegut, Happy Birthday, Wanda June, where a character says, sometimes the only way you can feel good about all this is to think about all the dirt that didn't even get to sit up and look around. Well, in the way of accepting mortality or getting some sort of control over the situation, what is it that we can do? I read when I was 17, almost 50 years ago now, about the stages of maturity. And this was probably in some scholarly publication like Reader's Digest. And I remember, there were 4 or 5 stages of maturity, and the final one was acceptance of death. I thought, I will never, never, never accept it. But I'm kind of getting there. Over time, that just happens.
Don't do it yet.
I'll do my best. Well, I also conceive that there's more than one type of death. There's a social death. People with terminal diseases, people who linger, I believe, go through social isolation and withdrawal that's hard to combat. Paula experienced this. She had so many friends, but most of them fell away, and that was sad. There were a few that hung in there, and I appreciate that. Physical and medical death, this is what we usually mean. There's also legal death. There's a whole lot to wind up when somebody dies. There's closing out their accounts, disposing of their possessions, disposing of their remains. There's telling Social Security Administration and all the credit cards and everybody, you have to wrap up the person's life in a legal sense as well as these other ways. This is what people used to think of as the good way to go. They called it the good death. It was actually kind of an ethos in the Middle Ages, and this painting looks like it's a scene from maybe colonial America. You die at home. You're in your bed. You're attended by loved ones. You have clergymen there. The angels are ready to enfold you. That's what people thought was the good death and strove for that, and could generally arrange it. If they didn't die in an accident, then quite possibly this is the way that they went. Now, this is what it is for us. You're probably in a hospital, wired up, old, sick, unconscious, alone. Kittens, am I right? Right? Kittens. Okay, let's not get too depressed about this. You know, it's only a little while that bad stuff happens. You're going to see a lot more kittens than you're going to see hospital rooms, I'm sure. Okay. There's an organization that seeks to help us find ways to change our attitudes and have a good death. This is awesome. This struggling with this because I'm left-handed and it's right-handed mouse. Okay. This woman is a mortician, and she founded this organization 4 years ago. I remember she wrote a book about end-of-life issues. She was on the interview circuit. She was on NPR. She was on some talk shows, and she decided to do something to combat our modern fear of death, our death phobia. You know, in other cultures, it's not the same way. There's so many other ways to deal with it. There are astounding things that people do. In some cultures, they actually have the deceased present. The semi-mummified body of your relative might live in your house or exist in your house for a year after passing, and that's how they deal with separation. It's a party, you know. Grandma, Grandpa's still right here. Eventually, you do take them out and bury them, and then in a lot of cultures, maybe even dig up their bones. I lived on Okinawa as an adolescent. It's a Japanese society. They had a festival called Oban, and every year the young women, the virgins of the household, would open the tombs, and they had above-ground cement tombs. I played in some of these tombs that were vacated. They'd ceremonially open them up, take out the bones of their ancestors, polish them, say nice things, put them back. And so there are people with very, very different attitudes than modern European and American attitudes. I think we must be the most phobic people in the world in America. We have a lot to live for. We have a lot of material things that make our lives easy. We have a whole lot of entertainment going on. If we're lucky enough to have loved ones, then we've got a lot to live for. But we still need to cope, I think, with the inevitable. There are plenty of philosophers who have a lot to say about it, but just a common sense approach says you can't do anything about it, so take the opportunities that you have to live your life, to have control of the conditions of your passing, if that's possible, and enjoy the time that you have.
Do you want to get back to the PowerPoint?
Yes, I do. There we go. Okay. So I encourage you to look at this site. It's awesome. This one's great. What can we expect and what can we avoid? How can we take some control of these end-of-life issues? If you've lost anybody, you probably know a lot about this already. I probably won't be breaking any news to anybody. But since the subtopic of this presentation is the Advance Directive, let's consider what we might do to take some charge of the eventuality, which is very unlikely to happen, but it does happen even to young people, where you might not be able to speak for yourself in a medical situation. You might be taken unconscious to a hospital for various reasons, a stroke, head trauma, a number of things, a terrible virus, any number of things can happen to you. If you're capable when you seek medical care, you can speak for yourself, and you have the right to accept or refuse any kind of treatment, including life-prolonging treatments. I assume that if you're in the ER, either you or somebody thought you needed to be saved, and that's what they'll do. They're not going to, correct me, Kat, if I'm wrong about this, they're not going to stop everything when they've got the crash cart out to say, oh, does this person have an ADR? Let's go look for it. No, they're going to try to save you. They'll intubate you. They'll do everything they can to keep you going. There's time to look for that. So what you can expect is that if you're brought to the ER or you go there and pass out, you're unconscious and haven't had time to talk about your ADR, they're going to do all that they can to prolong your life. The time will come when, if you have an ADR filed, that'll come to light and your wishes will be seen to then. But in the immediate term, you can expect that you or anybody that you take to the ER is going to be saved if they can possibly do it. So for the eventuality where you're incapacitated, you want to designate somebody to speak for you. You want to have it in writing. You want to have a medical proxy. And this is how you can seize some control of the situation, even if you're unable to speak for yourself. So how does anybody judge what kind of condition you're in? There are several Coma scales. The Glasgow Coma scale is one. It's been around since 1974, so it's stood some kind of test of time. One of the criticisms of it is that different scorers don't give the same score when they examine somebody. How does this scale work? There are several criteria, several dimensions. Eye response. You've got to score one of these 4 grades based on how you react when somebody examines you. It's a low score. No eye opening is a 1. Opening in response to pain is a 2, and so on. A higher score is significant. It's better for you. It's better. It indicates that there's less brain damage. It indicates that there's some better chance of some kind of useful recovery. Verbal response, same thing here. A low score is good. If there's no, a low score is bad. The higher score you get, the better. A low score, no verbal response is a 1. You make incomprehensible sounds, moaning, it's a 2, and so on. If you're fully oriented, you get a 5. So that's basically, you woke up after some period of unconsciousness and you know who you are and you know what's going on. That's a good thing, obviously. And finally, motor response. 6 grades of that. Somebody who's absolutely unresponsive, has no motor response, gets a low score on this Glasgow Coma scale. 2 is dyscerebrate posturing, sort of that. And as somebody who's in a persistent vegetative state, you'll see will often have this pugilistic stance where the limbs are drawn up and there's no response. I've seen people in that condition. You don't expect them to come back when you see that. I don't. I've known some people. I've known a couple of people who have been in comas. Jorge's sister, Vanessa, was in a coma for 2 weeks. Is that right? 2 weeks? Okay. But she didn't have physical brain damage. And so I think they knew probably early, didn't they? She had a good prognosis, and she came out of it, and she's perfectly normal. So, and she was young, and so that's very helpful. One of my coworkers' daughter had a similar situation, but she nearly died, and she was in a coma for 2 months. And when she did recover, and this was after a doctor had given a very poor prognosis and even advised maybe it's time to terminate care, but that wasn't done, and she is living. Now she has some impairment, but she's able to live an almost normal life. Another one of my coworkers' wife went into a coma, and this was long-term. She lingered for 6 years and it was bad. It's up to other people. If you don't make an advance directive, if you don't make your wishes known, somebody else is going to decide for you, and by default, they're going to decide that your life needs to be prolonged, which may or may not be what you want. You can express your wishes. If you don't do anything at all in the way of documentation, people are going to do the best that they can. Medical staff will do the best that they can to save you. And then it's up to the family to perhaps fight about it, perhaps agree that it's time to end it. But I think it's better if you express your own wishes. And everybody should know what you want. So, Glasgow Coma scale, the interpretation, there's a simple formula there. GCS 9 equals eye movement of 2, verbal 4, motor 3 at 7:35. So 7:35 in the morning, some hypothetical patient had a score that was not so hot. Generally, brain injury is classified as severe with a GCS of less than 8 or 9, and minor if it's a GCS greater than or equal to 13. Pretty good prognosis, expected to make some kind of useful recovery. How long you might want to go on in that state is totally personal. I mean, that's totally up to you, and but it's something you ought to think about and, if possible, express your wishes. What are the odds of coming out of a coma? You look on the internet, and you'll see some miracle stories. What they often don't emphasize, and if you read carefully, you can read between the lines. What they don't emphasize is that there often is impairment. Somebody who's been in a coma for an unusually long period of time and regains consciousness often has brain damage and may or may not have a quality of life that most of us would consider to be acceptable. If he hasn't expressed anything about it, then it's up to medical people and his family to decide what to do. Many people hold out hope, and I read something today about a case like this. Young man, recently married, motorcycle accident, head trauma, coma for months, then came out of it. And his wife wrote an account of it on a web page, but then there were comments that were comments by other people on this website that underscored that this fellow really was in poor shape. He didn't remember his life before he woke up. He had to relearn everything, and may not ever be self-supporting in the usual sense, which might be okay with his family, and who knows, he might be totally okay with that too. I certainly wouldn't put down anybody who has a value of life at any cost. I don't have that myself because I've seen some terrible things, and I don't have that opinion anymore that life is absolutely paramount and must be sustained at any cost. Okay, the ADR. I'm going to pass that around now. If you would please take one of each. So this is the document, and it's something we're going to talk about in a few minutes. This is what we should think about. If you want to file one, if you want to make your wishes known, this is how you can do it in this state. Also known as a living will. It's a legal document in which a person specifies what health care choices he has made or she has made and wants to be observed in the event that he or she is not able to communicate. Now there's some other things that you may hear about. Do not resuscitate. This is not the same thing as an advance directive. This is likely to be something that's done in a hospital. A person who has been revived but may be in a terminal state and simply is tired of being revived, only to code again and then be revived again. When people have had enough, they ask for this DNR order. It's not something anybody's going to force on you. Paula had a DNR, and that was really hard for me to sign, but I had to sign it. It didn't come to that. She left the hospital that time, but if she had coded while she was there, that's what would have happened. So what that DNR order, which is not on this form, this is something that if you're already in the hospital, if you're already under care, and you can speak for yourself, you can ask for. And it's a dire thing. You don't want to do that, and they won't do it lightly, believe me. A related term is allow natural death. Some people in the medical community prefer to replace the term do not resuscitate with allow natural death because they feel that this is less ambiguous, that it states everything that needs to be stated and avoids any idea such as euthanasia or anything being forced on anybody. This is totally DNR or allow natural death. It's what's done either by the patient himself if he can communicate, or sometimes by somebody who has medical proxy. Terry Schiavo's husband, do you remember that case? Terry Schiavo? Right. Huge national publicity. The reason there was publicity about it was that the family disagreed on what to do. The husband said it was time to terminate care. The patient's parents disagreed and tried to obstruct that legally and successfully for a while. But that's allow natural death. That's what that is, ceasing life support. It turned out that in that case, Terry Schiavo did live for a while. That is, she continued to breathe. Doctors had determined a long time prior that her brain was really destroyed. She was never going to be conscious again. Only autonomic functions were working. That is, her brainstem was working, but the cerebrum, no possibility of having a conscious life again. Parents didn't want to believe it. And when she eventually did pass away, an autopsy revealed that what the MRI showed was perfectly correct. A lot of her brain matter had been reabsorbed by her body, so there was just no way that a human being could be conscious in that state. Mostly it's not going to be a contention. Mostly people will never face that circumstance, have to make that decision, and it's very rare for a public display like that to happen. But it certainly got the nation talking about end-of-life issues. Hospice. At a point when somebody is determined to be terminal, that is, has 6 months of life left or less, one of the choices that patient can make is to just die at home. And that's what hospice is for. This is free care in this state. It's something you'll never be billed for. If you want to die at home, you say, I want hospice care, and this is closely related to palliative care. The hospice folks who talked to Paula and me described what it was, palliative care, and I said, hell no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to stop trying, but 2 weeks later we were ready for it. We said, yeah, it's time. And so what they do in that service is to visit you. A nurse will visit, provide comfort care. No effort will be made to prolong the life of the patient. And so it's similar to allow natural death in that way. The palliative care amounts to, I'll summarize it like this: dope me up and let me die. That's basically it. You're after comfort. You're after going the way that your life is going, the way that your condition is taking you, as comfortably as you can under those circumstances. What I personally think is that people should struggle and not give up easily. But there's a time when you just have to yield. You just have to say, that's enough, and accept it with whatever grace that you can. And that's so personal. That's absolutely up to the individual to decide when that time has come. So the modern concept of hospice, what I just said, palliative care at home. Now, you can also have palliative care in a hospital, and that's called palliative care. If for various reasons you can't go home, maybe there's nobody to attend you, maybe your relatives can't be there with you for the months that it may take, maybe you don't want to go there. Maybe you'd rather be in the hospital for some reason. Well, it's very similar. Palliative care in the hospital is painkillers. It's care for your discomforts, but it's stopping life-prolonging treatments of any kind. So if you're a cancer patient, you're in an oncology unit, I guess you'd probably be moved off of that. But chemotherapy or anything like that would stop. It would just be palliative care. It would just be making you comfortable till you go. And I've seen several people make that decision. Stop. Just no more. Just, you know, I can live for 7 days. If they do everything possible, I'll live for 3 days. If they do nothing, I'm ready for that. I've seen that, and the family generally accepts it. You know when it's that time. So there are many more hospice programs than there are palliative care programs. As I said, you can have hospice at home. There are also some facilities, but beds are few and far between. If you want to put your patient or yourself, if you're the patient, into a facility, you may or may not be able to get a bed in a hospice house. These are nice places. You know, they make it as pleasant as they can in the circumstances, but it's where people go to die. And if there even is a bed, they probably won't accept you until they think it's less than a week. And the palliative care teams at hospitals are medical professionals, whereas in the other case it may be nurses, it may be caregivers who are less trained, the sort of caregivers who would be in a nursing home, for instance. They have some training, but they're not doctors. There would definitely be a nurse to check on you. Okay, a will. Everybody's familiar with a will. You don't have to have a lawyer to make a will. You can get a book like this, 101 Legal Forms for Personal Use. And you might want to do some internet research. You might want to be sure that the conditions of your will, or rather that the form of your will is fine for your state, but they tend to be the same around the country. There might be differences, such as described here. Must be signed by at least 2 witnesses. Witnesses must watch you sign the will, and so on. You don't have to file it anywhere. You can put that will in your desk drawer. It's fully legal. You don't have to have your will notarized. In many states, though, if you and your witnesses sign an affidavit before a notary public, you can help simplify. I'd advise that. If you're going to make a will, just make it easy on everybody. The notary's stamp doesn't cost much, and it's an easy thing to do. And
it really can complicate things. I used to work for some parties, so it can complicate things extremely when I'm that's
good to know.
I would do a will without having a number.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
All right. Take that as informed advice. Don't technically have to, but you're much better off if you get it notarized. And you can put that any place. You can put that in a safe in your house. You can put that in your desk drawer. It's best to make several copies of it, I think. And if you do go to an attorney, definitely the attorney will have copies. And I think, just my unasked advice here is, let everybody know what the terms are. Somebody's going to have a bad day knowing that he or she is not going to get everything he or she thought. But in most cases, we're not rich. We don't have a big estate. It's not anything to fight over. And just tell people what you're going to do. And that should reduce the complication after you go. Even young people ought to have a will. Now, I'm going to confess right here and now, I'm preaching what I haven't practiced, because I do the same thing everybody does. I look at that will. It's like I'm closing a door when I do that. But I think I'm ready now. I think it's time to do that. I've had people come to my house and use my computer to do a will, and it stood. It's what the family used when they passed. Okay, lawyer doesn't have to do it, but you might feel if you have anything complicated, certainly if you have a big estate, if there's anything unusual about your circumstances, then you might want to have a lawyer do it anyway. And I don't know whether a lawyer would appreciate it or not if you go with a form that's already filled out, but that's the result of my research, that you don't have to have a lawyer. You're probably better, obviously, from what you just said, better if you have it notarized, and you might even want to have a lawyer do it. $500, $600, does it cost around that?
It depends probably on how complicated your estate
Okay.
is. Most lawyers these days, they want $1,500 just to walk in.
Wow. Okie doke.
That's like any lawyer is going to charge you a retainer. Some
Okay.
do it for less, some are going to charge you.
Okay.
And if you have a larger estate, especially if it says if you have kids or a home,
Mm-hmm.
I would strongly advise getting an attorney right through.
Okay.
If you're interested in estate planning for tax purposes, if your estate's that big, definitely an attorney and shop around.
All right. Once again, informed advice. All right, power of attorney. Now, I have done this. You can get a form from a book like this. I went to the library and Xeroxed a page out of a reference book in the reference section. And here it is. I had to conduct business on Paula's behalf when she wasn't capable of doing that anymore. She and I signed it. A notary stamped it. I was able to use this, and I had to pay a fee to file this with the county clerk in the Cleveland County Courthouse. But with this, I was able, and her idea, I was able to conduct the business that I had to at banks, at paying bills, things that needed to be done. For a while, she was getting Social Security disability, and in order to put that in the bank and take that out of the bank, pay the caregivers that we were hiring, I needed power of attorney to do that. Otherwise, everything would have had to be in an account in my name only, or the kind of account that's shared, but it's either or. Since we had separate money, we did this, and it was very useful. Once again, you do have to have a notary for that. You can download this form for free from these sites, and will this presentation be, this PowerPoint be posted? Eventually, okay.
If you got a cell phone, you want to take a picture of that screen, feel free to do that now.
Now this is what's called a durable power of attorney for general purposes. This is the health purposes form. Okay, this is a separate one. That's not what I did. That's not what this form is that I showed you. But for health purposes, this is to allow somebody to make medical decisions on your behalf. This is one way to do it.
They use this if you don't want to give full power to somebody, like the general power of attorney, like what you did.
Mm-hmm.
That's everything. You can make any decision whatsoever about anything for that person's life. This is limited to the medical decisions, not your financial.
Yes. It says on the site for healthcare only. Let's see if I can pull that up.
Is this in place of the advance directives?
No. This is something separate.
Okay.
Right.
Oh,
Oh, I'm not getting
You
that.
don't have a dummy set up on the book, but that dummy's
Okay.
not set up, so.
Okay, let's skip that then. Okay, HIPAA. Everybody's seen a HIPAA notification. You go to a doctor, any place that you're getting health care, and you're given this form that notifies you of your rights. You are able to designate that somebody can be told about your medical information. For example, you and your spouse or significant other or your friend go to the doctor, and you want that person to hear your medical directives. Let's say you're going to have some procedure, a colonoscopy. You might be too doped up to understand what the doctor's saying afterward. If you allow the person who's with you to hear that information, then that person can tell you later when you're in a condition to understand it what was told. Now,
Interestingly enough, they'll do that sometimes with a verbal consent.
with the verbal consent.
Not too long ago, my best friend was in the emergency room,
Uh-huh.
and they came in to tell her some things, and they're like looking over at me, and she's like, "Oh, you can talk all you want to, I don't care if she hears." And so then they went ahead with what they were going to tell her.
Ah, okay. Good. Special case minors, it's assumed by default that the parents are the health proxies, that they can make those decisions. There is an exception in this HIPAA Act if the medical personnel think that there's anything fishy. Think that particularly if they're concerned that the adult might be abusing the child, they don't have to tell that adult anything until all this gets clarified. So this is not just for privacy protection, such as not wanting your employer to know the state of your health, which for various reasons you might want to keep secret, but also for protection of a minor individual who is thought by a healthcare professional to be somebody that needs protection, and presumably that healthcare professional would also report to the proper authorities any suspicions about, in fact, he'd be required to, any suspicions about child abuse. So you're notified of your privacy rights. You have an opportunity to allow somebody of your choice to have access to your medical information. I have this idea, which I haven't confirmed, that maybe it's just for that one procedure instead of for all time. It's something that you can revoke in writing too. All right, we don't have this in the state, physician-assisted suicide. I don't even know how to talk about this. Paula wanted me to help her die, and I didn't do it because I couldn't let go, and also because I was afraid of going to jail. We really need this law, in my opinion, in this state. A few states have it. Oregon has it. California this law just went into effect, or was just signed by the governor in California. This is so personal. This is so basic. Nobody should dictate terms of life and death to anybody else. And it's a crying shame because people are suffering every day that we don't have this in Oklahoma. I don't know how to overcome the religious stigma. The reason we don't have it is, I believe, largely because of religious attitudes. As long as legislators would rather placate those people who feel that way or hold those beliefs themselves, it's going to be very, very hard to get physician-assisted suicide allowed by law in this state. I have some hope that it will happen someday.
I really think my wife would have done that if
It should be an option. Obviously, there should be safeguards. Nobody.
just waking up the next morning and the children finding her dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfectly healthy woman one day, the next day, and now at the hospital's skilled nursing units for 14 months.
That's terrible. Well, we can have hope that someday this will come around, but I don't see it in the next few years. There is an organization formerly called the Hemlock Society, now called Compassion and Choices. It has a website. If this is of relevance to you, you can get information from that website about not physician-assisted suicide, but your own. And once again, I don't know how to talk about this. This is something you don't want to advocate to people. It's certainly not an option to take when you're not terminally ill, I think. People are depressed all the time, and people do commit suicide because they're depressed. But as I said, I think people should struggle, and this is for the most extreme cases where it's time for somebody to go, but we're not allowed to help them at all. Literally, we don't make our pets suffer the way we make our loved ones suffer. It's something that I'd like to see change. And that's not in this ADR either. But what you have basically is an opportunity to accept or refuse medical care on any issue at any time. The consequences of refusing it could be prolonged and unhappy. That's why we have palliative care. That's the back door on this issue. We had a morphine machine that wouldn't let you administer a dose oftener than, what, every 15 minutes? Do you remember, Kat? I think it was every 15 minutes. We were there. We were hitting the button on that every 15 minutes. We did the maximum that we could there, but you cannot overdose somebody with that. The machine prevents it. Well, as long as we're being cheerful, let's talk about disposition of remains. There's some things to think about. Organ donation, that's a choice. That's a choice you can make while you're alive. That's a good thing to do. Everybody's organs are not in good condition for transplant. The doctors will decide that. Medical education. Okay. The body farm. Barbara wanted her body donated to the body farm. Well, I'll show you. It's in a slide that's coming up. Home burial. Okay, these are some options. Okay, organ donation. That's on the ADR. That's one of the things you can do on the ADR. You can do it when you renew your driver's license. Your driver's license is flagged for being an organ donor. Doesn't mean that will definitely happen if it comes to pass that way. They will definitely assess whether your organs are in the right condition for that, but it's a good thing to do. There's a wonderful video that shows what happened to the parts of her baby that died shortly after birth, and it saved or improved lots of other babies' lives. If somebody passes away in the hospital, medical personnel may suggest to the family, have you thought about organ donation? So if that patient is a good candidate, they will let you know. And with some sensitivity. Okay, medical education. This is donating your body to medicine. What this means is that your body's donated to be a cadaver, in most cases, for medical students to work on. And this is what Paula did. She wanted to do it. I looked up how to do it. I contacted OU College of Medicine, and it's called the Willed Body Program. So we signed papers, and they want to know that you're likely to make a donation in the next 6 months, not years out. So the likelihood is somebody who's, yeah, I know, right. I'm planning for that car wreck. So, but this is one option that you can use. You can donate your body to medicine and help doctors to be educated. They're grateful for those donations, and nurses and doctors work on cadavers. They need a supply of them.
Yeah, it's excellent, and OCCC has a cadaver lab, and I'm forever grateful, because there's nothing like seeing a pair of lungs. I remember holding some lungs in my hand, and I remember learning about alveoli, the little tiny pockets that when you hold a lung that's been inflated, when you hold a lung and you feel the little pops, and then you realize how delicate lung tissue is. You have a greater respect for mechanical ventilation and all the things, and it's all because somebody donated their body, and it's just so important for learning in medicine, and we're lucky to have that here. And it's a great thing for your loved one to do.
So it's not exactly reclaiming something, but in a way it is. In the worst circumstances, something positives can still happen from that.
And with the body donation programs, typically the cadavers are opened up. We go through them and study them, and then the remains are then put back into a package and sent back to the family to either bury or cremate, whatever they want to do. So it's not like you donate your body, that body, and then it's gone forever. It actually does go back to the family.
But there are some programs that both my grandparents donated went ahead and cremated the remains.
Mhm.
And at the end of the calendar year, they had a special service for all of the families of all of the donors.
Yeah.
And all of the ashes were interred in a common container, and there was a common plaque at the cemetery down close to the.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah, it was really nice.
That's good.
It was a church ceremony, but it was still nice that they did that.
Yeah. Okay, so that's just one of the options. OSU also has a program like this, and you don't have to look too far to find this. The body farm. You might have seen this on TV. I've seen it several times on TV. Bodies are exposed in differing circumstances in this acreage that's specifically meant to advance forensic knowledge, exposed to the weather and different conditions. And this is how the real people who have jobs like CSI know how to interpret, and Bone know how to interpret what they find when they find remains out in the open. As I said, Barbara wanted to do that, and she brought it up a couple of times, and I believe she was sincere, but in the event, since her death was unexpected, I didn't make that choice, and she was cremated instead.
That's kind of disappointing. Body farm, I thought you were going to grow a new one.
You grow a new one? Yeah.
You might want to get started on the nails.
Well, I've read a book that was a scientific look at death, and this scientist who wrote it was very objective about it. He said, you're really just getting back in the carbon cycle. The chemicals that are in your body, the elements in your body, are being freed and transformed. They're not really going anywhere. All the matter you've ever seen, handled, had anything to do with is still here on this earth, in the atmosphere. Same thing happens to our bodies. A lot of carbon is freed up, and eventually the CO2 that some plant breathes in could be part of you. You could be part of many trees or grass or plankton or something like that. I didn't find that very consoling, but there it is. It's objective fact. That's what happens. You go back into the carbon cycle. You can try to make that sound positive. You know, I could be part of a tree. I like trees.
I've seen things on the interwebs where you put your ashes underneath
Oh yes.
the seedling and you will plant it out in your
Right.
yard, and literally you fertilize a tree.
Yeah. Well, the ashes are mostly calcium. Most of the carbon is from cremation is put back in the atmosphere. Did you know plants are made out of air? I didn't know this until I was an adult. I thought soil becomes plants. Only a little bit. Most of it is carbon that's pulled in from the air. They make themselves out of air. It's amazing. Okay, the body farm. Probably none of us is going to end up there. Home burial. This is what everybody did until maybe 100, 150 years ago. People lived on lots. People lived on farms, and they buried their dead in the family lot. This is how everybody went until pretty recently. And green burials, that is, unembalmed bodies, can be buried in Oklahoma legally. There's really not much restriction on it based on my internet researches, and a book that I skimmed through one time called Caring for Your Own Dead in Oklahoma, I believe was the title. We're allowed to do that. Now, if you live in a housing development, you probably shouldn't inter somebody in the backyard. I think that might be against some regulation, but otherwise, if you have an acreage, you can, you can start a family cemetery if you live on a farm, just about anywhere you want to there.
Otherwise, check with your homeowners association.
The homeowners association doesn't allow anything. You can't even have a different roof. You know? Okay, what most people do though is cremation and burial. Cremation is a lot more popular than it used to be. I think people years ago had this idea that if they did anything to dissipate the body. It was making God work harder on Judgment Day to put all those molecules back. Now, if you think about the carbon cycle and how everything that's in your body has been in other creatures, has been part of other creatures many times through the eras, and what's in your body will, unless the world ceases to be part of many other animals. It's going to be a chore anyway. If there were a Judgment Day, there'd be a whole lot of substitution going on, I think. It's so hard to get parts for these things. But
everybody go back where you belong.
yeah, but it's hard to get details on how that's supposed to work. Okay, there is a document online.
It's not gonna open.
It's not going to open. Okay, yeah. All right. What this is a flyer that tells you about your rights as a funeral consumer. It's pretty informative. I recommend looking at that too. You might want to take a picture of that. If that's an issue for you at all, if you want to plan for a funeral or just get informed, there's a lot of great information in this. All right. I was bereaved, and I couldn't find anything except religious grief support. Well, I mean, what is there? There's grief support groups in the basements of churches led by a pastor. There is grief support in hospitals led by the chaplain. I looked and I couldn't find anything that was secular. There is this online group. It's also just a few years old. It's founded in 2011. A woman who lost her child and was an atheist, lost her child, and like me was not only not comforted by religious consolation from well-meaning people, but it actually hurt. It's rubbing it in. They believe something you just don't believe, and it makes it worse because it forces you to think more, feel more about how it's a permanent end and a permanent separation. So this woman founded Grief Beyond Belief. It's an online support group. It's not for me. I wouldn't like to put my personal feelings out there to exist forever or read by NSA or who knows who on the internet. I would like an in-person secular grief support group. I've had a fantasy about founding one, but I'm not trained for it, and I don't know that there is actually frequent enough need in the secular community for that to be feasible. If anybody knows about any such group, please let me know. I'm very interested. And you can read about them at this site. Let's see what's... Yeah. Okay, so, and it's a Facebook group too, and if that's something that's relevant to you, you might want to contact them. Maybe you feel differently than I do about an online support group. I'd really prefer one in person. All right, ADR forms. We've got them. All right, where can you find one? If you didn't have one in your hands, you could download it from these sites. Nope. Let's not party yet. But okay, let's party. Here's what I'm thinking. This is something you don't want to fill out off the top of your head. I mean, this is real life and death decisions about yourself. You're telling your doctors, here's what I want to have happen if I can't speak for myself. If I say you can't talk. Do you want to have food administered to you? Do you want to have ventilation administered to you? You can make choices here, and you can add comments to this to tell the doctors what you want to happen. You might give yourself some period of time, a month, 6 months, where you're not able to respond, not able to feed yourself, not able to breathe for yourself, and you might say that's enough time. And then, in accordance with your directive, your advance directive, they'll cease treatment. It's not as hard as you might think to unplug somebody. I've done it twice. Okay, it is hard, but you can do it. It's necessary sometimes, and it's the last caring thing you can do for somebody sometimes. Well, you can give those directions about yourself here. Don't leave people in doubt. Don't make anybody guess what you wanted. It's good to talk about it. This is something that needs to be witnessed, but it doesn't need to be notarized. It doesn't need to be on file with the county clerk, but what you should do is file it with your doctor, your primary care physician. Any hospital you're likely to be taken to, have copies around the house. Let all your relatives know where a copy is, so there will be somebody who will be able to produce it in the unfortunate event that you need it. One of the things this does is allow you to name a couple of medical proxies, a medical proxy and a backup medical proxy. That's another reason not to do this off the top of your head. You need to talk to some people and see if they're agreeable to that, see if they're willing to perform that function for you. And obviously don't list them if they don't want to do that. And see that there's a backup. So that if there's anything that isn't covered in the ADR where somebody needs to make a decision, you're authorizing somebody to make that decision for you. Not to contravene what you've already written here, though. As I understand this, reading this, your medical proxy can handle other things, but not contradict what you've already said in this advance directive. This is your advance directive. Party. I'm gonna suggest everybody take this form home and think about it, talk about it with people, check the boxes that you want, check the options that you want. And how about let's get together Thursday of next week at Rococo and witness each other's signatures. We'll already have decisions made. Tell you what I'll do. I'll buy 4 appetizers and a glass of house wine for everybody. All right? I haven't made reservations yet, but I'm going to take this applause to mean that some of you want to do that. So I'll get a table or a room reserved for us, and let's do it. After you take it away, you might change your mind. You might tear it up. But if you'll file it in your home, with your doctor, with your hospital, it's done.
Do we need to fill it out beforehand, or we fill it out?
Whichever you prefer.
Okay.
The important thing is that you need somebody to witness it who's not in your will. Yeah. So, and I'd be your witness.
Maybe
Well, I might have to rescind that. Okay. All right. All right. Any questions about all this? Yes, sir.
I just wanted to kind of annotate when you were talking about grief. There is the Secular Therapist Project, which you mentioned. You can get to that from the Grief Beyond Belief page, or just search for Secular Therapist Project online. If you need someone in person, professional, to talk to help you through the grieving process. The Secular Therapist Project vets people to make sure they've got credentials and they've got a naturalistic worldview, so they're not going to try and push religion on you when you go in there, and really help you with the issue. I can't recommend them enough. I've gone through them for some of my own stuff, and it was a wonderful experience. The second thing is, if you are interested in being a humanist celebrant who would do funerals here in the state of Oklahoma, Grief Beyond Belief needs you. So if you are willing to do that, or if you know someone who's willing to do that, go to their webpage and make contact with them. We're one of the few states left that doesn't have anyone to do secular funerals that's listed on their website anyways. So try and make contact with them if you can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yes, sir.
So when you came in late, how do you get one of these?
Ah,
I've
I've
got
got-
it in the back. Grab it.
yeah, there's the form itself, and then there's a document by a hospital chaplain to answer general questions about it. Oh, and by the way, I got a stack of these for free just by going to the ER at Norman Regional Hospital. I said I'm going to talk to a group about it, and I'd appreciate it if I could have some copies. They gave me 25 copies, no charge, no hassle. So you have several ways to get it. You can go to a hospital and get it. Your doctor will have it. You can print it off from online.
I've got a couple questions.
Yes.
You mentioned family.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of curious as to how maybe your religious beliefs and the wife's religious beliefs changed over time, if at all,
Well,
during the process of going through deaths, and also affecting your decision making or your wife's decision making about things like next direction.
I'll be happy to tell you. I've been an atheist all my life. I was never in a church. My parents told me when I was little, and my mother did, there's a God. I don't see a God. And, oh, well, he's here. He's everywhere. I can't see him. He's invisible. And I had trouble with that. And then later I figured it out that, no, it's not so. So I never had any religious belief to contradict or to lose. But Paula was actually a former Quaker missionary. She was a Quaker. She was a Christian. We agreed to disagree on that. When I said I don't believe in a supernatural, she said, you mean you're an atheist? I said, yes. And she said, I don't know how I feel about that. And in the end, we decided to just not confront it, not argue about it. Just she had her thoughts and I had mine. I actually went to a couple of Quaker meetings with her so I could experience that and see what that was about. What that is you sit down, you meditate. If the Spirit moves you, then you stand up and say something, which could be a Bible verse or just some expression of community or love or something spiritual. I didn't do too well. I was like that Affleck duck, you know. I was snoring and people would nudge me. And but there was a chaplain from Hospice, and he was a very nice guy. And I told him I'm an atheist, and we even had him do the eulogy at the funeral service. I mean, I wrote the obituary, I wrote the eulogy. I was too emotional to deliver it myself, but he did it, and I told him I don't want God emphasized in this, and I don't know that Paula would have liked it to be that way, but that's what I wanted. And funerals are really for the living, you know. So that's what I did. I didn't make the chaplain say, "Oh, and her husband's an atheist," but and it was a great funeral. I had many people tell me this is the best funeral they've ever attended. I don't know what that means or how to, you know, but people could see that it really was what a lot of people say. It's a celebration of the life of somebody. I'd say we did that, and there was no proselytizing. There was no preaching at that funeral. And, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah.
I found myself very interested in and looking into, had several conversations with the leadership of the organization called Oasis, which you might or might not be familiar with. And it is a community. It's not an atheist church. I would really like to see a community where somebody who's going through grief has people to share it with. It meets regularly, once a week. I don't know if the church would, but anyway, so I'm pursuing that with some serious intention, and I'm reporting to the board on what I find. But anyway, I just, if anybody's interested in telling me what you think about that, whether it would be like, heck no, I would never walk through the door of something that even resembled church, or yeah, I've been really longing for a community to share my life with, because there isn't anything. These meetings are wonderful, but it's not a consistent group of people that you share your life. So
Thank you. Yes.
One more question. Do you have any ideas on why Western culture really has such difficulty dealing with that? Why they seem to not want to talk about it? Other cultures around the world seem to understand that it's part of life. We just don't seem to want to talk about it.
I'm going to guess it's our religion. It's our traditional religion in the West. It's Christianity. The Celts that lived in Europe, in Gaul, what's now France, and part of Germany and the British Isles, didn't have the same attitudes about death. Now, they did believe there was an afterlife, and they believed in reincarnation, and they believed that you could come back as a tree. Hey, they were kind of right, you know. And that something, some kind of a spirit, lived on, and they weren't afraid of it. They didn't think about the dead being demons or anything bad. In fact, what is now Halloween was originally the Celtic pagan festival of Samhain, and they thought that this was a time when the barrier between the world of the living and the world of the dead was thinner, and you could have visitations, you could see your dead relatives, and they welcomed it. So the pre-Christian Europeans, I'm sure, wanted to preserve their lives, as all living creatures do, and grieved because there's a social problem when somebody important in your life goes away. But I don't think that, I don't think, especially considering that their lives were so much shorter than ours, I don't think they really feared death in the same way that we do. I think maybe not fulfilling their responsibilities because they weren't there to do it might have been even a bigger issue than it was for us, because a farmer might be the main support of his whole family, and that's a terrible tragedy. We have a little bit of a social net, maybe sometimes a better one, but I think that it's mostly Christianity that makes us fear death, fear a judgment. Many religions through the ages have had the idea of a judgment. It goes back to at least to ancient Egypt. And so that's part of it, fearing the judgment of a wrathful God. Did you ever read Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God by Jonathan Edwards? Yeah, it's horrible. It's the very worst, most twisted kind of religion that I can even think about how horrible human beings are, and we really deserve to burn in hell, and God holds us like a loathsome spider over the fire, and He really would like to drop us in, and it's only it's just awful stuff. Yeah, who's going to want an afterlife where things are like that? So that's my suspicion anyway. Also, if I might want to see the rest of the Star Wars movies.
Do you or does anybody else in the room know if advance directives are treated any differently depending on if you go to a religious hospital versus a public hospital?
I don't know that. Now, I have heard that, anecdotally, that physicians can disregard, allow natural death. So a patient's request for that, or do not resuscitate. They might just believe it's wrong and choose not to do it. However, you can change physicians. You can change hospitals. Well, if you're conscious, you can. So, I think there's some leeway. I mean, I honestly believe that the medical system is compassionate, and that they will maybe look the other way sometimes, or not force you to live any longer than you want to. And so I think there's some kind of back doors and workarounds that people can do quietly. You have any contribution to that?
I mean, from what I've seen, and I'm at OU Medical Center, it's the opposite. Physicians think that families leave patients too long, and they're very eager to talk about DNR status or comfort care or palliative care, and most physicians are. I mean, they're very proactive if they think there's a good prognosis. But as soon as those signs those benchmarks aren't being hit, they don't want you there, and they're very, I'm not going to say aggressive, but they're very attentive to us nurses on how does the family feel, and they schedule family meetings, and they'll schedule 2 or 3 meetings in 1 week with the same family to try to get them on board.
Mm-hmm.
That's my group of physicians, that's my experience.
So to them, it's kind of a triage matter. They could be expending their efforts on people with a better prognosis. Is that it?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Does anyone know if body farm accepts cadavers?
I haven't contacted them. They might have all they need from Tennessee, but I'd be interested to hear if you want to get in touch with them and find out what their policies are. I'm going to assume that it's similar to medical donation, that you'd fill out a form that they'd be expecting the body, and but you probably have to be kind of local. I mean, the transport would be handled by a funeral home, In Paula's case, we had to contact a specific funeral home to have her body transferred because these were transported because that's how they did it. Only dealt with one organization.
It took them forever to come.
Took them forever to come. It was several hours. By the way, speaking about legal death, did you know the time you die is not when you stop breathing? It's when somebody authorized signs document. That's in Paula's case. They said it was the next day because it was after midnight when somebody got there. But yeah, it took a long time for him to come, and I helped him carry her out, and we were blocking traffic. Somebody was out there parked behind a funeral home's truck, honking his horn.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Is this in Oklahoma?
It was in Norman. It was about 2:30 in the morning. Yeah, they couldn't go around the block, and they didn't know what was going on until we came out there with the cart.
They felt bad, I'm sure.
Well, I'm not sorry if they felt bad. They did stop honking. Yeah. But that's probably how it's going to work with the body farm. That they'll have services in place and probably an arrangement with some specific transportation system, and anybody local would be much preferred, I'm sure, to somebody who's distant. But on the other hand, if you really want to do that, and you can arrange that you can be there in your last couple of weeks, that'd be an interesting thing to do. Your kids would have a story,
Drive you out there. Weekend at Bernie's.
Weekend at Bernie's?
Right.
Yeah.
Throw you in the back seat.
Okay. Well, if those are all the questions, then how about we get together next Thursday night, take a picture of this, 7 o'clock Thursday next week with Coco, and we'll just witness each other's signatures.
The most important part was the free appetizers.
I won't forget. I won't forget.
They have really good crab cakes.
Oh, yeah, they do. They do.
Are you volunteering to buy crab cakes?
Huh?
Are you volunteering to buy crab cakes?
4 appetizers of some kind, a drink for everybody. Okay, house wine. All right. Beyond that, dinner or anything like that. Okay, you ship for yourselves. But all right, we'll have a little bit of a party. Okay. Thank you.